You ready for the one determining factor that is going to ensure that you have either a successful or failure of a life? I know I sound a lot like that careers advisor counselor that no one ever sees at high school. Well, I would have been good at it.
A better you starts today.
Sydney, Adelaide and Perth, guess what? I'm coming to your town with my live show. If you don't see it, you'll regret it. You'll never know very niche, obscure history. Now, listen up. I'm wearing exactly the same jacket that mine used to wear as well. Did yours do this? Hey, stay away from my chicken. Did they ever say that to you? I'm not going to explain the context behind that because it is fairly incriminating. Obviously, we were trying to steal his lunch. Now, and he was very unenthused about it as well. Anyway, and we've gotten that out of the way, which is obviously the most important part of this video. But let's get on to the second most important part of this video, which is that this honestly does determine whether you are going to have a successful life or not. It is seriously just this one outlook on life. Now, I know that as soon as you hear this, you are going to be sitting there and saying, I already know that. It's the glass half full, glass half empty outlook. And yes, it is. But I think that this is a much more precise, much better way of looking at it than glass half full and glass half empty. Now, why is that a problem? I had a hair in front of my eye. Talk about a glass half empty. I can't see. But now I can. I can see clearly now that the glass is half full. Oh, just to reinforce positivity. What is the problem with the idea of something looking at something like negative or positive? Why is that not very good for the brain? Because really it's a sort of abstract concept. And don't you feel, let me know this, if you are advanced along the self-help tour de force that is self-help, if you are along that, don't you feel after a while that you start getting worried about the fact whether or not you're having enough positive thoughts in your day? Doesn't that really start to weigh on your mind? Is this positive enough? Am I being positive at the moment? And that creates stress. We don't want that, do we? It's a very finicky problem I know that I'm talking about right now. But come on! Back me up! Has that been happening to you? Are you one of those people that's like, yeah, I just have to think positively. And then you think, I like dogs. And you're like, maybe I should be thinking of something more positive than that. I like the fact that oceans exist. I assume that they have some function. That starts, is that enough? This is the way that I think that you should be looking at. It's a great book. I think that you should check it out in your own time. Nonetheless, I will give you all of the contents for it for free in this 10-minute video. Just to scavenge off them. But it's the gap and the gain. The gap and the gain. That is the way that you should be looking at it, which is that every time, if you think about it, every time that you are in a negative mental state, what is that? What is at the core of you always feeling down and glum? Let's focus on depression for a second. Depression usually is something along the lines of, I'm a loser. I don't have any friends. If I do have friends, they're just pretending to be my friends. I don't know what 2 + 2 equals. I'm stupid. What's happening there? If you analyze the reason that you are upset in virtually every circumstance, even if your grandma died or something, what is that? You are down one grandma. It could be worse, you could be down 2. Oh, you already are? Oh, well, that's a shame. Really shouldn't have used dead grandmas as an example. There's a bunch of other examples that are nowhere near as heinous, such as dead mums. No, but anyway, the point is that most, you only have one of those. The problem, the problem is that when you are looking into this, most of the time you are looking for something that you don't have, that you are negative out of your life. Most of the reason that we are sad when somebody dies is that we'll never get to see them again, which I don't think is true. You just create yourself a mental illness where they're alive in the corner and they're a ghost that you can speak to at any time, which means that you can talk to them more. Plus, they only have to say what you want them to say. So that's my little bonus self-help tip there. But what I'm talking about is the fact that you are always feeling like you are missing something. And anytime that you feel like you are missing something, you are going to feel bad, in inverted commas. So, just know that little cheat code. Every single time you are feeling bad, it is because you are sitting there and you are thinking, I don't have X. And that is, and I can tell you now, We know this from extensive research, especially looking into entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs feel like that all the time. And it's like, you've got everything, man. You've got a cool 80s Ferrari. You've got this jacket, obviously, which is a sign of success, an 80s jacket. You've got slicked back hair with that really chat gel with the very ethnic man on the front. I think it's called Taft or something. You've got Taft gel you can afford, not the Coles wax. You've got it all going on, man. And what happens? Usually the way that you get there, which is a big contradiction in self-help, which is something that you always have to start balancing off. I really need to stress this. To succeed in life, you need to feel a certain level of dissatisfaction. Otherwise, you're fine where you are. And if you're fine where you are not going to strive for anything. So, if you are dissatisfied, you should always understand, good, that is fuel. That is fuel for motivation. There is not a better fuel than you being dissatisfied. You are going to go after something if you are dissatisfied. That's great. Should be writing that down. But the second thing that you should be very aware of is the fact that if you are permanently dissatisfied, if you are permanently, I suppose that's like a car that never stops for fuel. And you can burn through your entire life like that. Now, that is what happens when you get to a certain level. When you get to a certain level, you are constantly dissatisfied because what got you to that level is dissatisfied. And so it just becomes an ingrained habit in the way that you think about things. So when we go back to this guy with his 80s Ferrari, he is always thinking, yeah, but I don't have the latest model. Yeah, but my wife is only a model, not a Victoria's Secret model. Yeah, but I've only got $10 million. My other friends make $15 million. That is what starts happening to you. Everything is always about that. So really, it is this weird dichotomy where a lot of people fall into the trap of the more they succeed, the more they feel like a failure. And that does drive them to be materially more of a success. That does. It factually does. There is research on this. However, that's not a good life, is it? Now, the other thing that is very conversely can be used as like a gauge on the other side, which is proven time and time again. You know what is the quickest, easiest way to guarantee another 10 years of your life? Living in the game. Yeah. They did a study where they were looking at old nuns' diaries in some convent, and they noticed that any of the diary entries, it's really me just going through a nun's diary, but there's not going to be anything extreme in there. Well, I don't know, I've seen a couple of pornos like that, but most of the time there's not going to be much in there, right? And so they're just, writing about their day-to-days. The nuns that were generally negative most of the time, neutral to negative, lived 10 years less. The nuns that were generally positive lived 10 years longer. They're looking forward to things in life. There is actually a reason to get up in the morning. What happens, and this is very bad, and I know that this happens because I've been in this exact situation. There is a point where you start living your dream life. And if you practice these principles, you will reach your dream life. Like whatever you are conceiving in your head, because you are just spending more time on it than the average person. And you're doing it more efficiently. You are spending your time more efficiently and you are spending more of your time on it. You are going to get the thing in your head that you want, especially if it's like a genuine ambition of yours, because it is going to drive you to get there. Once it's there, you always get this. You hear this over and over again from successful people. They always say, is that all there is? When they get there, they always think, is that all there is? Then they start thinking, well, it took me 10 years to get there. What was the point of that? I'm older. I've got less energy. This isn't as good as I thought it would be. I enjoyed the hustle. What are all of these thoughts? They are, at the end, always gap. I don't have this. I have lost this. I should have this. A recipe for feeling bad. Here's the other thing. Yes, that does act as a fuel to get you to places. You know what else can act as a fuel to get you to places? And this is also just equally as true. Thinking about your gains. You can train yourself to be motivated by pleasure as opposed to pain. And it is much better to do so. Why? At its core, because you will just live a richer life. You will be far less of a pain to be around. They can talk about this in child psychology all the time. You want to get a child to change its behavior. Most people are constantly sitting there, why don't you ever do your homework? You never do your homework. I can't believe you don't do your homework. I remember this with my parents all the time. Don't do this. Don't do that. What does the brain think every time it's like, don't do it? It's just like, well, what should I be doing? That is what the brain thinks. When you start saying, oh, you did your homework that time. Awesome. When you start appreciating the gains, you did your homework again. Amazing. We know over and over again, far more likely to motivate. This is much better. First off, Much better external motivator. An internal motivator, you can beat yourself up and move to that place. That's absolutely true. You can do that. What acts as both an external and internal motivator is giving yourself pats on the head like the dog you are. That is what's going to get you to move. That's what's going to get you to move. The gain. Focusing on the gain every day. This is why it should be an absolute habit of yours, and this is why I'm always saying it, especially when you're starting out. You have to write down 3 things that you accomplish at the end of every day so that you think at the end of the day, it wasn't a waste. It also trains you, I should be doing things that I can write down so I've got my gains. At the end, my gains? That's what you need to be focusing on. The gain of what you are doing every day. This is exactly the same as gratitude, but a lot of people don't like the idea of gratitude because it sounds like very namby-pamby and godlike. And, God's dead, am I right, baby? So a lot of people always like to think about the gain. I think it is a more precise way, but it's pretty much exactly the same way of saying what you are grateful for. Grateful for us also just has the added bonus of you can be grateful for a chair. You haven't gained that chair that day. But I suppose you can say that you have gained the gratitude of the chair. You can always do that. But I think that this is always a thing. In your head, every time you say gain, this is something that I've gained today. You go boop, boop, boop. And the thing is, every single thing that you have ever done in your life, you can focus on as a gain. I'm talking everything. Even if you did something that day, you're always beating yourself up. Oh, I can't believe that I smoked a cigarette today or whatever. You can also say, yes, but I have gained the knowledge that that was a bad thing to do. I feel bad about that. That's cool. There is ways for you to just circumtrick your brain into having more of a gain outset. Now, why do we want to have a gain outset in terms of your success? Well, in terms of when you get to top performers. Top performers in the corporate world, for instance, they're always measured. Guess what? The top performers of, we're talking CEOs, we're talking members of boards, over and over it is extensively studied. They are in a gain or positive mentality 50% of the time. 50% of the time. And it's very easy for you to constantly just be thinking, am I in a gap or a gain at the moment? Am I thinking about what I don't have, or am I thinking about what I have gained today? You can do it. I'm doing it right now. I'm thinking about the gain of the fact that I've got another video. I'm also thinking about the gain of all the subs that I'm going to get on Jordan Shanks, aren't I? Which means you will get up to 3 videos a week of me just life coaching you through your life, giving you these messages, giving you these reminders so that you are pushed to do more. Over and over again, I get people coming up to me all the time saying, change my life. Obviously it does. You get a good life coach, life-changing. You know what I heard somebody say the other day? This is a great way of putting it. For those of you who can't afford, this is pretty much what I'm doing, a cheap-ass life coach version. And also, way better than most of the other life coaches that you pay for anyway, hundreds of dollars. There are ones that are good that are for hundreds of dollars, but if you get a good hundreds of dollars one, this is what they always say, over and over. I can mark the exact moment of my life that I got a life coach. My income went up, my relationships got better, I had more free time, I managed my life better, I'm generally more positive. It is just a peak requirement of their life, obviously, because it's like with anything else, you should be coached through it. It should be somebody externally looking at you and saying, do this. You need that. So it's less than a bloody bar of chocolate. And I'm telling you, over and over again, I get the same feedback. I noticed that moment. That moment when I signed up to Jordan Shanks, I went boom. Anyway, gap in the game. What we need to start getting from you is less of the gap moment. You can feel it. You can visibly feel it. This is an incredible revelation. You can feel when you are in the gap. You can see it on someone's face. You can see it scrunching up. I don't have this. I don't have that. When they're in the gain, wow, this is amazing. There is an openness to it. It is the same as a happy dog where they're like, ha, ha. And when there is a scared dog that is feeling like they're in threat, why? Because the gap is threatening. The gain is inviting. And the thing is, you always have to remember this. You live in a time where there is not many real gaps. Most of those gaps, think about this, are completely invented in your head, as are the gains. So it's entirely, we'll say this, almost entirely dependent on you. You could, live in the Ukrainian underworld and be watching this, sitting there just being like, I'm just working on my learning skills because I like the game. But generally, most people that are watching this, have no excuse to be thinking about gaps all the time. And yet they do, because that is the natural inclination of the human mind. What they should be focusing on every day is gains. And you can be focusing on it right now. In fact, I want you to focus on it right now so that you get a good glimpse of exactly how that feels. So, what am I going to ask you to do? 10. Give me 10. Give me 10 gains that you have had today. 10. I said 3 normally for every other day. Right now, you're going to give me 10. And you're going to tell me that you don't feel better afterwards. No, actually, don't tell me that. Tell me that you did feel better after.